A write-off of the public debt or exit from the European Union. The ultra-SYRIZA came to power in Greece and it demands a debt relief from the EU and IMF. What is the hold-up on the way out from the crisis? Geopolitical and financial problems are sinking the world economy. The financial easing for farmers. The main grain operator of Kazakhstan lowers interest rates on loans and reduces fines. 167 billion tenge for modernization. Increasing passenger and cargo traffic requires reconstruction of major Kazakh airports. The Kazakh ballet Spartacus conquers the European audience. The Astana Opera toured the Genoa, Italy.
Good evening, I'm Rahim Ashokbayev and this is Kazakhstan Weekly, where we summarize the major local and international news of the past week. Our tonight's guest is a known public figure, Adil Akhmetov. Mr. Akhmetov, I'm glad to see you.
Good evening.
The Greek left party SYRIZA celebrated victory during the early parliamentary elections in Greece on January 25. Alex Tsipras' party received 36% of the votes and 149 out of 300 seats, which was only 2 less than that needed for the absolute majority. The center-right party New Democracy, headed by Antonia Samaras, got 27% of the votes and received 76 parliamentary seats. Many experts predicted victory of the left radicals long before the announcement of the election results. Just like the referendum on Scottish independence, the Greek election was the most discussed topic recently because, in case of victory, SYRIZA didn't exclude the possibility of Greece's exit from the European Union.
The new Prime Minister has joined the Independent Greeks Party. Such an alliance gave SYRIZA the opportunity to form a new government. According to the Greek legislation, more than 150 parliamentary seats are needed to form a government. Among SYRIZA's key election campaigns was holding talks on debt restructuring and renegotiation of budget cuts. The new Finance Minister Janusz Varoufakis, who is best known for opposing the Greek debt, had been tasked with the new challenges. The victory of the left wing could dramatically change the internal policy of the country and also provoke the nation to exit the Eurozone. SYRIZA actively advocated the write-off of part of its debt to the European Union and the International Monetary Fund, as well as for the abolition of the austerity measures. Otherwise, the left threatened to declare a default, which would inevitably result in country's exit from the Eurozone. The creditors have previously stressed that the terms were unacceptable and Greece, in case of victory of the left, would have to say goodbye to the Eurozone. However, the major European powers, together with the United States, are calling for Greece to remain in the EU. The US President Barack Obama said the United States intends to work closely with the new Greek government to help the country achieve a long-term prosperity. The White House hopes that Greece will remain in the Eurozone and will carry out proper reforms. Germany also wants to collaborate with the new Greek government, as was stated by the official representative of the Cabinet of Ministers of Germany, Stefan Seibert. He added that the German government is open to negotiations on the extension of the current program of EU assistance to Athens.
So, Mr. Akhmetov, Greece is one of the poorest countries with plenty of social and economic problems. Why is the European Union so worried about Greece, to lose Greece?
As you have just mentioned, that Greece is one of the poorest countries of the European Union, and unemployment in this country exceeds 26%, but among youth it reaches more than 56%. That is too bad, of course.
Extremely high rates.
And European Union is worried. In case, for example, the new government tries to exit European Union or to leave the Eurozone, other countries might follow the suit. I mean, Portugal, for example. The situation is also very poor. And Italy, for example, or very many other countries might follow. That's why the European Union, especially Germany, is very, very concerned and very cautious. And on the other hand, the new government is at the initial stage of its existence. And of course, this euphoria will pass. On the other hand, if you, for example, look at the debt of Greece, it's too much. Mm-hmm. It's about 320 billion euros. And how can, for example, Greece exist? According to the previous government, the previous government was committed to pay back all those debts. And the new government is trying to, for example, to write off some parts of the debts. But the creditors, as you know, the European Union and the European Bank and also International Monetary Fund, they are very strong institutions. If, for example, new government behaves as they have planned during the election time, it will pay back very negatively. In that case, those creditors will punish, I think, Greece, and all the banks of Greece will go bankrupt. This for sure. I think just a couple of days back, or yesterday or the day before yesterday, European Union foreign ministers held their meeting, and Greece's new Minister of Foreign Affairs participated. And I listened to his speech, and from his speech I learned that Greece will behave absolutely differently. Earlier, if you remember, for example, Greece didn't support sanctions against Russia, but this new minister already declared that Greece is not a bad boy. Greece will join the European Union's opinion.
What does it mean?
That means Greece took back the earlier, for example, commitment. And that means my feeling is Greece will stay in European Union and in Eurozone, because the situation compels Greece to behave that way. Otherwise, Greece will go bankrupt. You see, 320 billion euros debt is too much for a small, poor country like Greece. That's why economics is number one.
I think
Politics is number two.
The world economy is still in stress due to many factors, most of which are geopolitical. The European Central Bank is not able to stop the deflation in the Eurozone. China admits that the country is moving to the slow growth trend. New policy of the Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe didn't save country's economy. The IMF lowered its forecast for global economic growth in 2015 to 3.5%.
The unemployment rate in France has exceeded 10%, while economic growth is expected to be at 0.1%. According to the European standards, the normal rate is set at 0.3%. To somehow solve the problem, the Parliament of the Fifth Republic has approved an economic reform, making Sunday a working day. The neighboring Italy has established a new record in 40 years. According to the National Institute of Statistics, more than 3 million unemployed have already been registered. The reason is the economic crisis and the largest public debt in the EU, which amounts to 2.5 trillion euros. The EU newcomers are also experiencing a difficult time. The Croatian economy slumped since joining the EU on July 1st, 2013. The level of unemployment and public debt did not reduce. The 46-year-old Grabar Kitarovic, who recently became the president, has promised to improve the economy, solve the problem of unemployment, energy security, and the outflow of young people abroad. The post-Soviet countries were also affected by the crisis. The Georgian national currency, the lari, rapidly tumbled. Prices for essential goods have not gone up yet, but those who got mortgages in US dollars will take a hit because the cost of the apartments that were purchased have increased by almost 20%. Due to the austere economic situation in Europe and the fall in the world of oil prices, giants such as Siemens and Sony are also sustaining losses. The German industrial conglomerate Siemens has reduced its net profit in the first quarter of 2014 by a quarter. The income from continuing operations fell by 18%, while the number of new orders decreased by 11%. The Japanese corporation Sony laid off 1,000 jobs in the sector of smartphones manufacturers in Europe, the US, and China. Until March 2016, the company intends to reduce a third of employees. Resort business also sustained losses. About 40,000 tourists from Russia canceled reservations at hotels and returned vouchers to the Indian state of Goa. The entrepreneurs had to reduce prices for goods and services. Just in 1 month, rent price of guest houses dropped from $30 per day to $15, but the prices in the beach cafes and shopping decreased on average by 20%. The U.S. turned out to be the only country that avoided the crisis, according to President Obama. Although, in his annual address to the people, Obama stated that his country remains the only one among advanced countries in the world where citizens don't get paid for sick days, maternity leave, and allowances for sick children. Meanwhile, experts believe that the crisis will affect most major oil exporters, such as Russia, Nigeria, and Saudi Arabia.
So, Mr. Akhmetov, how soon do you think the world economy will overcome the crisis?
Difficult to say when, because if you remember the first crisis, for example, 2008 and 2009, and some economies began to recover. First of all, the United States of America, for example, is doing well. But on the other hand, if you take the whole world, in one of the sources I read, the citizens of the planet and their debts exceed more than $200 trillion. You see, very many countries have a lot of foreign debts, and including the United States, because as you remember, the United States, for example, state's debt exceeded $17 trillion. And if you take other countries, they follow the same suit. For example, France, the situation in France is very shaky. In Italy, in Portugal. Now, just yesterday I read that the situation in Spain is more positive than negative, and the economic growth has shown some signs. But still, as you have just said, Japan's economy is also very low, very shaky, and the growth in China is not as high as it used to be. It's lower than the previous.
New normal,
yes,
they say.
Yes. That's why the situation is very, very shaky. And if you take Kazakhstan, we also export a lot of oil and gas. And because of the fall of the oil price, and the situation in Kazakhstan also is very serious, and our government is taking measures against this situation. So in the whole world, as if sometimes my feeling is as if the recession is coming back. You see, in spite of the fact that some countries are recovering from the crisis, earlier crisis, but European countries, for example, are undergoing very difficult economic situation. Growth is very, very low, about zero or below zero. If there is growth, it makes up about at least at the most 1% or 2%, very, very low. That's why this situation will continue for a while. At least it takes 2 or 3 years more to recover from this kind of difficult situation.
Let's talk a little bit about Kazakhstan's dependence on this crisis and on external shocks.
Our main economic partner is Russia. As you know, the situation in Russia is very, very difficult now. For example, ruble has fallen down. Just yesterday, I listened to the mass media, and it lost about 40%.
It lost, since the beginning of this year, it lost 14 points.
14 points, now $1. If you compare with ruble, it is 70 rubles. That's too much. And this situation might go worse because sanctions from the side of the US and the European countries will follow, will continue, because just the foreign ministers of European countries held their meeting, and they voiced that if not serious sanctions are not taken, but previous sanctions will continue. That's why it will affect the Russian economy. And Russia, as I have already said, that is one of our main economic partners. It will affect Kazakhstan. And the situation is very shaky. We should tell it just frankly.
Kazakhstani Food Corporation announced of intent to reduce the amount of penalties for farmers affected by last year's poor harvest. Loans for purchase of grain for the upcoming season will be refinanced. These measures should support the domestic agricultural producers during the difficult period.
Last year, the unpleasant weather conditions prevented the Kazakh agrarians from having a good harvest. The adverse weather conditions have reduced the pace of harvesting of grains and oilseeds in the north of the country. Also, complaints were received about the quality of wheat. According to the Minister of Agriculture, the average yield in the Republic was below than the previous year, 12.7 centners per hectare against 13.3 the year before. A particularly difficult situation was registered in the northern regions of the country, where snow fell in mid-October and before it continuously rained. As a result, in Astana, one of the grain-producing regions, farmers failed to fill up to 114,000 tons of seeds to their granaries. Many farmers had no choice but to apply for loans, the 10th part of which has not yet been paid. Since January of this year, penalties and interest on debts have entered into force. The Food Corporation has decided to share the risks with farmers and reduce the amount of penalties. It also supported the prolongation of debts. The corporation has allocated some 1,800,000,000 tenge from own funds in order to finance the purchase of grain in the Astana region. Now, the refund terms have been eased by reducing the interest rate from 10 to 5% per annum.
So, Mr. Akhmetov, Food Contract Corporation is a very important institute for Kazakhstan agriculture. Do you think that Food Contract Corporation will perform their basic functions and still maintain the balance between their financial interest and the interest of the local farmers?
I think yes, because as you have just mentioned, underlined that last fall was very, very difficult for the agrarians. Due to the weather situation, there was a lot of rains, heavy rains, and early snow. Agrarians lost a lot of harvest.
More than 30%.
Yeah, about 30%. And Food Corporation, of course, first of all, was very serious. They were trying, it was trying to fine, and penalties were discussed. But now the Food Corporation changed its policy. Rather than to fine, Food Corporation, taking into consideration the difficult situation of the agrarians, it's going to ease penalties and fines. I think the Food Corporation is on the right track, because it depends on the agrarians too, because it makes money. It buys, for example, wheat from the agrarians. And this difficult situation will not continue for a long time. We know from the history that agrarians, every year they grew a lot of harvest, a lot of wheat, and the Food Corporation, for example, bought a lot of wheat, and they exported a lot of wheat to abroad, to many countries, including Asian and European and southern Western countries. And I think the Food Corporation has changed its policy. Very positive changes are coming. If they support agrarians, agrarians will pay back. Mm-hmm. If they reconstruct their, for example, penalties or fines, and prolong the deadline to return the debt, I think agrarians will be able to pay back. And it is good for the country, it will be good for the agrarians, and food corporation will also gain good results at the end of the day.
The Airport Management Group company, which has been entrusted to manage 6 Kazakh airports, came to the conclusion that the difficult financial situation of air harbors could threaten the safety. In the next 5 years, about 167 billion tenge will be invested in the improvement of Kazakh airports. These expenditures will be directed on major projects for the reconstruction of runways, passenger terminals and improvement of airfield infrastructure at the capital's airport as well as airports of Petropavlovsk and Kostanay. New passenger terminals will be built in Astana, Kazakh and Shymkent. Watch the next story to learn more about the modernization plans.
Kazakhstan continues the implementation of the program Joly Path to the Future. One of the most important points of the new political course of the country is the development of transport infrastructure. In one of his speeches, the president has pointed out the necessity to increase the capacity of the international airport of Astana, modernize air harbor in the other cities of Kazakhstan, and connect the capital city with all regions of the country by air traffic ahead of the Expo 2017. A significant growth in passenger and cargo traffic was registered in 6 national airports of Kazakhstan last year. For example, the traffic for passengers has reached a record 3.7 million people. The Director General of the management company Airport Management Group, Claude Baden, said that 167 billion tenge will be invested in the development of Kazakhstan's airports until 2020. These funds will be spent on the reconstruction of runways, construction of new passenger terminals at the airports of Astana, Shymkent and Kazakh, and improvement of airport infrastructure in the regions. In addition, much attention will be paid on improving the service in airlines, and the allocated funds will be used to implement a safety management system that meets all international requirements. Claude Baden has outlined the importance that it is expected to hold a joint work with airlines. Kazakhstan will develop a route network of regional airports due to the increased domestic and international flights. Another problem that should be resolved is the insufficient load of airports in Semey, Kokshetau and Petropavlovsk. Small volume of passenger and cargo traffic does not allow air harbors of these cities to cover their operating costs. According to the forecast of airport network development, these airports will not reach the 200,000 passenger a year mark even by 2030. According to Mr. Baden, in world practice in such cases, the state covers the costs of the regional airports and their maintenance. Following the example of North and South America, Finland and the Russian Federation, it is necessary to carry out the consolidation of strategic infrastructure facilities of airports. This will reduce the amount of property taxes after the reconstruction of infrastructure of regional airports.
Mr. Akhmetov, does AMG's conclusion cause any concern about the level of security provided by the Kazakh airports?
I would say yes, because first of all, we should underline that this reconstruction of airports, the infrastructure of airports in Kazakhstan, first of all, has been underlined by the president. In his last address to the people, the president paid much attention to the development of infrastructure in Kazakhstan, and airways, roads, railroads are included in this program. And as you have just mentioned, a lot of money is going to be allocated to reconstruct airport services, airport infrastructure, not only in Astana and Almaty, but in major cities of Kazakhstan, in northern parts of Kazakhstan, in western parts of Kazakhstan, as you have mentioned, in Kazakh. And Astana should be linked with all the regional centers. This is number one. And that's why a lot of money is being allocated into this area. And number two is safety, because planes should be very safe. And Kazakhstan is gaining more planes from year to year. And I think if Astana is linked with all the parts, regional centers of Kazakhstan, I think it is also good for the passengers, because it takes very little time, and the connection, if connection between the cities are put into place, we, first of all, passengers will gain from this. And that's why from the point of security, I would say security is number one. Last time we discussed that plane crashes, for example, if you remember. That's why security is number one.
The Astana Opera has triumphantly performed in Italy. The ballet called Spartacus, staged by Yuri Grigorovich, the master of the world choreography, opened the tour. The troupe from the Kazakh capital has also presented bits from the well-known ballets like Swan Lake, Don Quixote, Giselle, Nutcracker, Sleeping Beauty on the stage of the famous ancient Carlo Felice Theatre in Genoa. The artists from Astana also performed Kazakh national dances.
The Carlo Felice Theatre was founded in 1824. The building was severely damaged during the World War II, and only in 1987 it saw a major 4-year reconstruction. The building was pretty much rebuilt anew, and today the theatre can accommodate more than 2,000 spectators. Over the years, such stellar troupes as the Spanish National Ballet, the American Dance Theatre, the Beijing Dance Academy, Milan Ballet, Mark Tomor's Dance Group, Guangzhou Ballet, and many others performed to the best of their capability on the stage of the Carlo Felice Theatre. Kazakh performers stirred the interest in the local crowd as tickets for all performances were sold out long before the arrival of the troupe. This ballet has never been set in Genoa before, although the story of Spartacus is known to every Italian. The performance was warmly welcomed by the audience, and some couldn't even hold their tears, while others admitted that they would be happy to come back again. Dozhan Tabildi played the strong and fearless Spartacus. He had to study literature in order to play his part. In addition to the classical ballet, the Astana Opera troupe has performed national dances. The Italian audience was watching the performance of the never-seen-before Kazakh dances with genuine interest. The acting, the unique national colors, all caused the highest appreciation of the theater goers. Your theater is already 20 years ahead of ours by its structure and technology, but we have a great stage for ballet performances, and now thousands of Italians have the opportunity to appreciate the master of your artists. I thank my destiny for what has happened to me. To date, I still remain the youngest Spartacus. This record has not been superseded yet. The next day, people came to the theater, which is in the city center, and said that they were crying over the play because our artists conveyed so many natural emotions that moved the spectators. The ballet gives an excellent idea of this important historical fact, and the music alone is very beautiful. I liked it very much, it was very nice, and the artists have worked out every detail. The choreography was excellent, I really liked it. The artists are so good looking, all of them are just magnificent.
So, Mr. Akhmetov, our Astana Opera Theatre is quite young, but the troupe had already several successful world tours. So, in your opinion, why does the classical ballet cause such an interesting emotion to the foreign audience?
First of all, we should underline that Astana Opera is becoming very famous. If you remember, at the end of the last year or before the last year, for example, Astana Opera staged a lot of pieces in the United States of America, in Canada. On the way back, they stopped over in Paris and in Brussels and other places, and returned very successfully back to Kazakhstan. And from this point of view, we should underline that opera and ballet schools in Kazakhstan are very strong. I would like to underline that Opera House in Almaty, for example, still is very famous, and it stages a lot of pieces, not only of our own, for example, ballets, but also classic ballets of European countries. And now, for example, in Italy, our Astana Opera has staged Spartacus. And one of the viewers has underlined that technologically and structurally, Astana Opera surpasses their theater. You see? This is a good evaluation, I think. And this is not, we should again and again underline that opera and ballet are not new things in Kazakhstan. We have long history of development of these arts in Kazakhstan. For example, Almaty was the center. On the other hand, Kazakhstan sends a lot of, for example, dancers to Moscow and to other places. They get educated and they come back, and that's why they walk. They are almost equal to the world ballet and opera theaters. That's why this is the result. We shouldn't be surprised. We also underline that Astana Opera is new, young, but opera and the ballet school in Kazakhstan is not young. It's absolutely experienced school. And this is the result.
And recognized in the world.
Absolutely. It is recognizable.
Thank you very much, Mr. Akhmetov, for the great discussion. Hope to see you next week.
Thank you.
Finally, here is a brief preview of the events of the coming week. The first meeting of the Eurasian Intergovernmental Council, with participation of Prime Ministers of Kazakhstan, Russia, Belarus, Armenia and Kyrgyzstan, will be held on Friday, February 6 in Moscow. And on the same day, events dedicated to the Year of People's Assembly of Kazakhstan will officially start. We will discuss these and other important events in our next program. Thank you for watching. Best of luck and goodbye.